Suffolk County District Attorney Ray Tierney worked for 14 years as an assistant district attorney in Suffolk County. During his early years with the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office, he investigated and prosecuted cases involving organized crime, street gangs, murderers, and other violent street crimes. In 2008, Ray Tierney joined the United States Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of New York, where he oversaw complex criminal investigations and prosecuted violations of federal criminal law. After the U.S. Attorney's Office, D.A. Tierney went to the Kings County District Attorney's Office to run their Violent Criminal Enterprises Bureau, Crime Strategies Unit, and Body-Worn Camera Unit. While in Brooklyn, he oversaw all aspects of long-term violent street gang investigations and prosecutions in the office and worked with the NYPD and federal partners on developing investigations to seize guns, prosecute gang murders, and allocate resources to dismantle the many criminal street gangs causing most of the violence in Brooklyn. In January 2022, Ray took office as the District Attorney of Suffolk County. Eric M. Taylor has more than 40 years of experience in corrections and is the former chief of the New York City Department of Corrections, as well as the former director of the Camden County Department of Corrections. As chief of the department from 1994 to 1998, Eric served as the chief operating officer and highest-ranking uniformed official of the largest jail system in the United States. While he was chief, Eric strategically managed $300 million of the department's $745 million budget and directed and controlled a staff of 11,000 uniformed employees and 1,300 civilians. Eric's tenure was highlighted by many unprecedented achievements, including reducing inmate violence by 83%, developing and implementing TEAMS, a management analysis and accountability system, significantly reduced overtime expenditures that enabled the NYDOC to meet its overtime budget, created a nationally adopted gang intelligence database, and developed and executed policies and procedures affecting multi-million-dollar cost savings. In recognition of these and numerous other achievements, the New York City Department of Correction renamed one of its Rikers Island facilities in Chief Taylor's honor the Eric M. Taylor Center. Upon retirement in 1998, Chief Taylor became an international corrections and security consultant, working with the Brazilian government and various correctional facilities looking to overhaul and develop procedures and protocols. For more than 36 years, Joseph Fox served with the New York City Police Department, retiring in 2018 after serving 6 years as the head of NYPD's Transit Bureau. Following in his father's footsteps, Joe joined the New York City Police Department in July of 1981 and ascended through the ranks to a 3-star chief. As the head of the NYPD's Transit Bureau, Joe led a team of more than 2,600 men and women who secured the nation's busiest metropolitan rail system. Now retired from public service, Joe is currently employed as the Chief of Staff with SEAL Security, a full-service global security firm based in New York and London. Joe applies his years of leadership skills in his leadership, executive, and life coaching practices. Chief Fox also continues to harness his decades of law enforcement experience and his unique leadership style to teach and inspire others. A renowned communicator, Joe also expertly translates the power of personal loss throughout his life into purposeful messages that inspire others. Through speaking engagements, executive leadership coaching, and personal development, he conveys a life's worth of lessons to others in law enforcement and the private sector. Joining these 3 distinguished men on stage is the host of the Executive Leadership Conference, Suffolk County Sheriff Dr. Errol D. Toulon, Jr. Now in his 2nd term of office, Sheriff Toulon is Suffolk County's highest-ranking law enforcement official, working tirelessly to serve and protect the county's 1.5 million residents through innovative programs to reduce crime and recidivism and create transparent fiscal policies. Sheriff Toulon has more than 30 years of criminal justice experience, heavily centered upon corrections intelligence and combating gang violence. Prior to serving as Suffolk County Sheriff, he worked for 25 years with the New York City Department of Correction, beginning his career as a New York City Correction Officer and culminating as the Deputy Commissioner of Operations. Please join me in welcoming District Attorney Ray Tierney, Chief Eric Taylor, Chief Joseph Fox, and Sheriff Toulon.
I feel so vulnerable. Gosh. Wow. You know, I'm fortunate enough to have currently working with our District Attorney, Ray Tierney. I met Chief Fox when I was a Deputy Commissioner on Rikers Island. And of course, Chief Taylor, who I had to salute when he walked in the room, was the Chief of Department when I was a young captain in the Emergency Service Unit. So I feel very fortunate to be moderating or being up here discussing their careers and also their leadership styles because of their their outreach to the community, their determination to keep men and women safe, and their determination to keep our community safe. So thank you all for being here. So I'll start off with you, District Attorney Tierney, or should I call you Ray?
Call me Ray.
Ray, thank you. Okay. Ray, what was your inspiration to even become an attorney and then eventually a prosecutor?
I think, when I was a kid, I did well in school, and everyone said, you should be, I talked. I talked a lot. And so they said, you should be an attorney. So as a kid, your juvenile thought of what an attorney is, you go to court and you put the bad guys away. So as I got older, and more sophisticated, and realized that attorneys could do a whole bunch of different things. For me, I just always wanted, that job to work with the police and other law enforcement agencies to try to keep the public safe. That was what really was in my mind. And then I think once you start and do that job, there's no better job as an attorney you can have than be a prosecutor.
Thank you. Chief Fox, what led you to the NYPD?
So when I was about 5 or 6 years old, my Uncle Eddie, my mother's brother, would ask me at family events. My father was a cop. He was a cop in the 7-1 precinct. And my Uncle Eddie would say to me, "Where does your daddy work?" And I'd yell up, "My daddy don't work, he's a cop." And everybody would, laugh, and it was always like a set-up joke, and I was the prop because I just answered what was honest. And I realized became the chief of Brooklyn South in the year 2000, and my first medal day, I was speaking at the 6-6 Precinct Medal Day, and I told that story, and I was surprised by the laughter I got. But finally, all those years later, I realized why I said, "My daddy don't work, he's only a cop." Because from my perspective, he was something special, he was something different, he was working when other kids' fathers were home and vice versa. People came to him for advice for everything. If their kid was using drugs, they came to Walter Fox. If they had a car accident, they came to Walter Fox. And I think that was it. It was something I saw that, he was the guy to go to for help. And a cop was one of those people that could do that.
Oh, thank you. Chief Taylor?
Well, as a child, I always wanted to be a police officer. And I said, when I get old enough, I'm going to take every exam until I get to be a cop. And I did. So I took the correction exam, I took the police exam, and correction called me first. And I was there for like 10 months, and then I left and I went to the police department. And I had a great time as a cop. And but then they had the big layoff, and I was laid off for about a year and a half before I was called back to be a correction officer again. And I said, once I'm back, I'm making money again, I'm never going to leave, and I'm going to stay here. And it was good for me. I made a good choice. People used to laugh at me when I said, one day I'm going to be the chief. And they don't laugh now. But that was a big joke when I was an officer. But I had a great career, and I loved what I did, and I loved both jobs. And it's funny because what I learned in correction, and then went to the police department, and then worked there for a period of time. When I came back to correction, I put all that together in order to do some of the things that I was able to achieve in correction.
So, I told my staff this when I was a young captain in the emergency service unit, and you had become chief of department. You were a pretty scary dude. I know, I'm a lot bigger than you. I was scared, excuse my French lady, scared shitless of you when you would walk in your uniform and you'd point your finger and say, "Didn't I tell you?" And that intimidation, but yet the same, if the men and women needed you, if we had a problem with an inmate, or at that time at least with inmates, you always backed your staff, which is something that, I learned until this day. And I think I told you, you and my dad are probably the two biggest mentors during my time in New York City. But, turning to Chief Fox, what are some of the biggest lessons as you ascended into that leadership role that you found were, like wow, I have to make some of these decisions that maybe as a young police officer, sergeant, you saw your bosses making that now you had to deal with?
Well, there's actually two parts to that. One is we outgrow mentors. If we do it right, we're going to outgrow our mentors. That's just, and we have to remember, we're going to get to a point. I actually learned this from one of my COs. He was so disappointed with one of his mentors. The guy was a 2-star chief in headquarters. So now he's out there as an inspector in a precinct. And he calls this guy up, something that he wanted him to help with, to help a cop out. And the guy wasn't getting it. So this man who he idolized, like somehow became different. And he was so demoralized. He called me up. It was one morning. I was still home. He says, how do you deal with this? How do you deal with some of your peers that just don't get it? So he starts to tell me the story. And I said to him, Billy, he hasn't changed. He's still the man you looked up to. You've changed. You've grown. You know, you're out here. You're leading people. You care more than you did then. You want to throw yourself into people's lives more. And he's where he was when he mentored you. And we have to remember and respect that. So one thing is because that was difficult for me. There was a couple of, I had those moments that he had. And that's why I was able to share that with him. The other is, if I could go back and do it again, I write a monthly column for the Rockaway Wave. And this Friday is the one I wrote, and it's about, basically, it was 2006. Nevros Duncan was a detective on our staff, and I spoke with Nevros, and he's okay with this, but he was close to dying, and he had like an emergency liver transplant, and I came up with this, what I thought was a great idea of recommending him for the Teddy Roosevelt Award, which is a prestigious award that only a few people get, people who overcome life-threatening illnesses and go on to serve still. And a few months went by, and the orders came down with the 5 or 6 people getting it, and he wasn't there. And I got really mad at everybody around me, my staff. Why didn't this happen? I wanted this to happen. I said so. And I just said, okay, it'll happen next year. And I tripled my efforts. I told three times as many people as I thought I told before. I wrote it someplace. And I got to see Nevros in this beautiful athletics club or something in Manhattan with his family. And, you know, the commissioner, he got an award, and he was so happy. And it occurred to me, why did I sweat so much? Look how quickly this year came. How many people around me, their lives were miserable for a week because I was disappointed. And the bigger question is, how did I communicate what I wanted back then? All these people that were selected to be in my staff, why did they let me down? Maybe they didn't. Maybe I didn't communicate it the way I should have. Maybe I didn't tell as many people as I should have. So the idea of being able to look like that moment for me was, listen, I'm saying it a lot better now. It took years to get to the point where I could really see that it was probably me who dropped the ball. So to get to that point where you find yourselves wanting to put your hand through a wall someplace, to realize that what's my part in this, to get to that point where you realize that when something fails, chances are you have a part in it, whether it's long-term through failure of preparation and training, or short-term through what you said or did or didn't say or didn't do. So those are the 2 takeaways for me. Learn to outgrow your mentor gracefully and still appreciate him or her, and learn that you have a responsibility in everything around you. You're not just responsible for when it goes well, you're responsible for when it doesn't go well.
Right, thank you. You know, Ray, you spent a significant portion of your career in Suffolk and then went to New York City, and now you are the DA of one of the largest counties in New York State. How do you keep your staff motivated? You know, you have when Laura Kern was talking about picking your team and having a great team around you, which you do, how do you keep them motivated every single day?
Well, and thank you. I do have a great team, and I'm very fortunate in that. But I think you have to sort of appreciate your circumstances. And we, as lawyers, we have opportunities in the private sector, which are material, and are great, but the job that we have as prosecutors is so important and so rewarding. So I think the way you motivate people is, you have the opportunity to do, to do great things, have an opportunity to try cases, to make a difference. So I think you just have to continue to sort of, impress upon your staff that what we do matters, and that we're going to continue to work hard. We're going to not make excuses for some of the changes out there, but we're going to overcome those changes together. We're going to support each other, and together, we're going to do great things that you could never possibly hope to do in the private sector.
Thanks. Chief Taylor, you assumed the role of chief of department during a very tumultuous time. It was over 20,000 inmates. It was a lot of violence, on the island during that time, and yet you were able to transform, the agency. And so, how did you motivate the staff? Beside the fear and the intimidation, how did you motivate the staff to really see your vision and move it in the direction that you wanted it to be in?
I think a large part of what I tried to tell people then and get across to the staff was that we wanted to be a top agency. I wanted to be the top correction agency in the nation, and I wanted my people to get there. And in order to do that, we had to work together, and you had to have a good team. And I believed in, the team concept. I don't know if you remember, but everywhere I went, every command, I took all my people with me. And I did that because that would get them to buy into what we were doing and make them feel like they were a big part of all the accomplishments that we were making. At the time you were talking about, one of the biggest problems we had was the gang problems in the department. And in order to change that and get that under control, everybody on the team had to buy into what we were doing, and I had to listen to what other people had to say. So, a lot of times everything is always not the chief. And a lot of times it's that officer who gives you an idea, and then you use that idea, and, everybody saying, oh, wow, that was great, you did a great job. But in reality, your team did that, and you have to give people credit for what they did. So that was a large part of, what caused me to be able to do a lot of things that we put together at that time.
Thanks. So as a 3-star chief in the New York City Police Department, I'm sure there's many situations that you had to deal with, especially with the community, with your police officers. Could you give us one that's still telling to you, either how did that happen, or maybe we could have done something differently?
Wow. There was a lot. One was actually what we could have done differently. Your mind goes right to the failures, right? In the 6-3 precinct, there's a park, Marine Park, and there was a pretty violent assault. It was a bunch of girls on one girl, and they took the report, and the victim didn't mention anything about supposedly the victim. When I say supposedly, I believe the cops. The victim didn't, make any statements or about anything biased, and it turns out it was in fact a biased crime. There was all kinds of terms used, and it took us about a week to classify that as a hate crime. And in that week, that command was, the people who lived there were furious, which was really tough on me because I lived 3 blocks from where it happened. And it was, they were so angry. We had a summons guy. There was a guy, this is literally all he did from the day he graduated the academy till the day he retired, was wrote summonses. It was a problem. I once got out, I was in my windbreaker on the way into work, and I see a car with a ticket on it. I look, and it's a hydrant. I actually measured with my feet. I'm looking around, covering my stars so no one sees. And it was like a foot short of 15 feet. And I was all set to like take action, and my staff told me, you can't get involved in that. It's not 15 feet, leave it alone. Anyway, this guy's out there still writing his summonses. And then we got this like really toxic letter I got from somebody saying, this girl was beat up, you didn't take it seriously, you hid it under the rug as far as why it happened, and this guy's writing tickets when we step out to drop our laundry off or our kids in daycare. So I moved him immediately. Should have done it soon. I should have thought of that. And the bottom line is, a week later, we called in hate crimes and made it a hate crime. And we shouldn't have waited a week. And there's that thing. That's chief to cop on the switchboard. You know why cops always failed those tests they used to do, the integrity tests? I'm sure they still do them. They'd call up, they'd say, I need to be fingerprinted. That would be what the test taker would say, right? And what would the cop say? You can't do it here, you have to live here. They'd come up with all these reasons why you can't come in here and be fingerprinted. Why? Not because they were trying to be difficult. It was harder for them to come up with all these stupid reasons why you couldn't be printed. Instead of stopping and saying, boss, I have somebody here wants to be printed. What do I tell them? Or looking at the sign that's right here that says the guy who does prints is here on Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays. But they'd go through this long song and dance telling people why they can't, and they'd fail the test. And we failed that test because instead of saying, okay, it's a hate crime, got it, we stood on principle and the fact that they didn't say it when it was reported. And I learned through that, speaking with Mike Osgood, who's like an expert in hate crimes. It's very common for victims of hate crimes in particular to leave out details that point to a hate crime, or because I don't want to get too far into the psychology, but part of it has to do with shock, not in belief, and not knowing the significance of some of the things that were said. So that was one that we had like a whole community. I mean, of all the 13 precincts in Brooklyn South that could have been up in arms, this is the only one I remember in 11 years. It had to be the one I live in, which is not one of the reasons I moved to Rockaway.
Okay.
but that's one, and I hope we got it right in all the others.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So now, Ray, you've prosecuted a lot of gang members in your career. Is there any one particular case that really stands out that you said, wow, we did a damn good job, and I'm glad we got that guy or that group of guys?
Well, I think, when I was a federal prosecutor, and I think Jerry Hart's in the room somewhere, I talked to her. There she is. So we worked with Jerry when she was running the FBI gang task force in Suffolk County, on Long Island. And so I think all of those murders were great, were rewarding because they had previously gone unsolved. So I think in total we did about 67 or so of these murders that had gone unsolved, and then we developed some informants, we developed some different evidence, and we were able to prosecute them. I mean, the one that really sticks out to me is the murder of Vanessa Argueta, who was a 19-year-old girl, and her 2-year-old son Diego Torres. And to see those bodies laying in that frozen field in Central Islip, it was really just an unbelievable. It wasn't gory. It was so upsetting because of their age, and it was something that the Suffolk County Police took real serious, FBI, Suffolk Sheriffs, and we worked together as a team to put that case together, and we found the gun at the scene of another murder in a beach in Rockaway, and basically one murder begat another murder, begot another murder, and before you know it, you've got 50, 60, 70 of these guys who just were running around committing all these murders, committing all these havoc in these communities. So, but it started, with Vanessa and Diego. So that's something that, I'll never forget.
Thanks. So this question is going to be for all three of you, and I'm going to start with you, Chief Taylor. When you were looking to promote people, looking for those future leaders in the organization, what qualities were you looking for?
Well, I don't know if you remember, but one of the big things with me was, in order to get promoted, you had to show me that you were an analytical problem solver. And that was the only way I was going to move you ahead. because I was trying to change the culture of the agency at that time, and I wanted people who were more educated, who looked at things in a more analytical way, and that's how problems should be solved. If you remember, any problem that we had up to a point in correction, the answer was go search. Regardless of what happened, it was go down there and search, throw things around, get everybody in an uproar. Where my feeling was, no, we can't do that anymore. We have to be professional at what we do, and I want to know the who, what, where, when, and why of everything. And if you can show me that, then you're telling me that you have what we need to move you ahead as a boss. And that became a big part of the promotional process. When we came out with a new order and how you're going to get promoted, these were the questions that I was going to ask you. And I believe that from that point on, we started to get better supervisors. We started to run a better agency. And those are the things that I thought worked.
Okay. Chief Fox?
Before my time in Brooklyn South, I spent 18 months as the chief of Queens South, and I got there in October of '98. And one of my first few weeks there, a couple of months, I started visiting commands, visit with the CO and the command. And I walked into the 113 precinct, and Jack McManus was the CO. Jack recently, about a year ago, died of 9/11 cancer. It was that day that was the beginning of me learning, me coming to know that he was one of the greatest leaders I've ever become friends with and worked with and watched. But what really got my attention, I didn't know him before, is I go into his office, so everybody's saluting you, and you're out in the parking lot and you're walking through, and I go into the office and I sit down, and I barely hit the seat like this. I'm not even settled. And he says, anybody who knows Jack, he had this really humble way about him. And he looked at me and said, Chief, would you mind, you got 2 minutes? The squad upstairs, technically they don't work for him, so it's not even his command. The squad upstairs, they literally hunted this last homicide perp under the boardwalk in Coney Island. Would it be okay if we go up? Sure, Jack. And we got up, and that became a 45-minute walk up to the squad. Because he stopped and introduced me to every single person, not by their title, not by their rank, but whoever happened to be within his field of vision. And on the way down was another 45 minutes. And then he said, as we're almost in the office, he said, you have to meet this woman. She's like an icon here. And next thing you know, there's a woman in braces. This is the last few months that she was able to stand, in crutches. And she said, hi, I'm Isabel Redmond. And she was a cop who in the 113 precinct was almost killed about 3 years before. And from that, Isabel did about 50 sessions, motivational. She'd have a group like this with cops, and they would line up and cry and take items off their lapels. One guy gave her a medal that was blessed by the Pope personally, and he said, I want you to have this. So Jack cared about people. He cared about his people more than he cared about me. He cared about his people more than he cared about himself. And he cared about that visit where he had, an audience with the chief, and all he did was made it about his people. And that's what I look for. People who care about the people who work for them. People who support the people who support the mission.
Right.
Well, I think that's a really good point. I think you look at two things. You look at like culture and proficiency, and like who really furthers the culture and who's really good at their jobs. Because everyone who works in the agency knows what everyone's relative skills are. So you can't really. So you have to have a good person, but you also have to have a person that really wants to work with other people, wants to help other people, wants to mentor other people, wants to further the culture of the organization. I think in the beginning, when I first started, I was very much a lone wolf. I wanted to learn the job. I thought I was good at the job, but I just wanted to do my own thing, and I got passed over. And rightly so, because I was just into my cases and my thing and I wasn't so much into, contributing to the culture and helping other people. So I think you have to have two things. You have to be, be good at your job because the other people in the organization is going to know. And the second thing is how are they going to contribute? How are they going to make everyone else better? And by supervising them, by mentoring them, and by supporting them.
So, Chief Fox, you were telling me earlier that you had a prior relationship with Chief Taylor very early on in your career. You want to share that with everyone?
I'd love to, but you opened up saying how tough he is. So I have to turn and get a nod, yes or no. Yes or no, Chief. So I did 4 months in corrections before the NYPD, and I'm in the academy. Now, we know how impressionable we are, when we're in training, and this man was one of the instructors, right? So, one of the gods of the day, and he let it be known, or maybe we heard it from the other instructors, that he was any day, any week away from getting promoted to captain, which in corrections is the next level up. And while he's teaching our class, his guys, one of them walked in and said, "Eric, got a notification for you." And he reads it in front of us that he's getting promoted tomorrow to captain. And he does this whole Academy Award type, I want to thank my family. He's fighting back tears. We're all excited. We start clapping. And then they come in after 5 minutes and tell him it's a joke. But it's so memorable to me because in both those instances, when he found out it was a joke and when he thought he was getting promoted, this is the man that I saw back then. He was humble, he was kind, he was gracious, he loved fun, and he was good enough to be getting promoted. So are those a couple of the guys you called when you made 4-star?
Yeah.
So I watched his career, I've been stalking him. And we haven't socialized, but whenever I'd see him get promoted, I'm like, oh, that's the guy, it's great. And worked with my sister Irene.
Yeah.
Yes.
Who kept me apprised of everything you did.
So, what's the most satisfying or rewarding part of the job?
For me?
Yes, for you.
I think the greatest thing about being the DA is I see myself as a force multiplier. So when I first started out and I was that lone wolf doing my cases, and having good results in a small sort of a small sample size. Now I could take that and I could support all of the police and investigators and DAs, and I could give them the resources and hopefully some advice and some input, and they'll have similar success. And it won't be just one person, it'll be 225 attorneys and 100 investigators. And we could make a big difference, and they could have that success, because really, whatever I've done for my career is pretty much over. As a prosecutor, as a courtroom prosecutor, my career is done. But all of these other people, their career is just starting. And so to play a role in helping them to develop professionally, and then to have some great results and do some really great work for the public, I think that's by far the greatest part of this job.
Thanks. How about Chief Fox? What was the most rewarding part of the job for you?
Watching people grow. Ira Kadeem Griffith. It was a week or two after 9/11, right? And I get a letter in the mail, and it's handwritten, and the language is kind of choppy, and he's basically thanking me for the 23 cops who died and for what was done that day. And he says in the letter, I used to think cops were out here to harass people, but now I know they do more than that. So I ran out of my office and went to my staff and said, find this guy. He's probably been collared a few times. We could turn him. And they found him, and the reason the language was choppy was because he was 10 years old. And in a school project, they gave him choices of government officials to write to, and he chose the police department. And he lived in the projects in Canarsie, and they went and got him, and I had a visit with him, and those visits continued until he went away to college. And when he came back from college, this says so much about him, because any of us who've had kids away in college, the last people they want to see when they're home on break is us. He would always come visit me at my office, Brooklyn South, and then Livingston Street when I was chief of transit. Became a teacher. He told me on one of the lunches that he got accepted to teach in Detroit. And I said, Ira, that's a challenging place. And he said, I know, Uncle Fox. That's why I'm excited about doing it. Now he's a principal in Newark. And he's had a little baby. And I wrote about him. I'm not selling copies of The Wave, by the way. I don't get paid for writing that thing. But that was last month's article. And I went out to see him to like catch up and take a new photo. And I got off the highway and I'm going through Newark and there's bars on the windows and I know I'm in a tough neighborhood. And I just thought, my 10-year-old friend is responsible for the education of these kids. But the thing about this is, because we talk a lot about team, we talked about it here, that was the team around me that did that. They never asked me if it's okay if Ira comes next week. I would come in from a meeting in headquarters and say, hey, Ira, how you doing? He'd be in the office with them. They didn't ask me if it was okay to take him to promotion ceremonies. They did. They didn't ask if it was okay to take him to police academy graduations. They did. They exposed him to all these things. I called his mom once a couple of years into this just to see how she's doing. She says, he's doing okay, but you know, when he gets out of the police van, he gets a lot of cat calls, 50, 50. And I thought, what are the chances of him making it? That this is the resistance he gets when he tries to latch onto something positive. And Ira made it. And it was the team around me that really did it. And they knew they could. And it was Richie Gubitosi and Joyce Hooper who connected with the mom, and she was a PAA in my office. And here's the thing, we all have Ira Kadeem Griffords. We just don't know them all. You know, we all have people that we had a chance encounter with, and they're a different person because of that chance encounter. Trust me, that I'm sure every single person sitting here, the man back there with the lights, the cameras, whatever you're doing, you have impacted somebody. Trust me, you did. And he's one that I know of. And I know that I got to be part of that for 37 years.
I can't remember what I ate for breakfast yesterday, and you're telling me names from 30 years ago.
I have too much time on my hands.
Chief Taylor?
You know, for me, seeing people that I worked with, who worked for me, move up the ranks, get ahead, do important things for themselves in the agency, that was very important to me. You, for instance, seeing you here. You know, I always tell my wife, this guy is Errol, I know this guy. He's sheriff now. You know, all those things make me happy when I see that. And I feel good about seeing people on their journey when they make it to where they really want to be and seeing them contribute to society and everything. So that's the way it is with me.
So
That's the first thing he said when I walked in. I'm so proud of Errol.
Oh, thank you.
Right?
Some of the men and women here aren't, but but thank you both. So what piece of advice, and we'll start with you, Chief Taylor, if you can give anyone in this room about aspiring to be a leader, what would you say they should do?
First of all, my belief is you have to have a plan about what you want to do. You know, and when I was reading about today, and my wife I was asking her questions about, well, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? She reminded me that you had a plan your whole career. She said, when you were an officer, you used to write notes, and she's right. I used to write notes about what I would do if I made this. And every rank I had notes on about, if I get to this rank, this is what I would do. If I get to that rank, this is what I do. By the time I made chief, I just had to open the drawer and start putting things together, and that's how I was able to do a lot of things. So you have to persevere, and you have to really want to make a difference. But I think it's out there for anyone who wants it. And if you work hard, and you'll hear me talk about perseverance all the time. On the inside of my ring, college ring here, it says perseverance, because it took time for me to get through that. it took time for me to get my second degree because I had gotten sick walking down the street at school. And I had to come home, I had to get stents and all that stuff. And then it took me a year to get back into school. So, you know, perseverance is what gets you where you want to go. And I think that I would say to anyone, put your mind into what you want to do, have a plan, and you can achieve a lot of good things, you know.
Okay. Chief Fox?
Two parts. First, recognize that you already are a leader. Whatever your title, whatever your position, you already are a leader. If you see a 4-year-old toddler spontaneously hug his 1-year-old sister, he wasn't taught that. He wasn't taught that in toddler school. We instinctively want to help others. That's why we're here. That's why we are here. Every one of us who's here, the jobs we took, every job we took. Me, you know, my father, you know, when my daddy don't work, he's a cop. You know, there was something about that he helped people. That's what I wanted to do. And I know police officers don't have a monopoly on helping people. We all do. So know that we are, because here's the thing. If we don't give ourselves credit for being a leader, if we don't think we are, then we won't be leaders. Now, what does that mean? That means we'll be the guy or the gal that when we're walking by a bunch of people who work in our office or on a post someplace, we're going to do this. And we're going to look down, and we're not even going to turn and acknowledge them. Those people who do that are not bad people. They just don't know that if they stopped and said hello, that it would matter to you or to me. They don't know that they are born leaders. They don't know that they are great leaders. So know that we are. And then, of course, read things, watch, you know, TED Talks, study leaders. A true leader never says, I'm a leader. A true leader says, I'm a student in leadership. So keep studying leadership, but study, don't do third-party listening and reading. You know, as you're reading these books and these quotes, don't think, I know exactly who needs this. Think how I get this, and do something with it. Because how many of us have watched a great speech on TED Talks? And if somebody asks us three days later, how'd you like that speech? I sent it to you. It was great. And if they said to us, tell me what you got out of it. A lot of good things, but we don't know what I got out of it. So what I do is this phone here, my calendar is filled with stuff. An idea hits me, I like it, I put it in here. And sometimes I move it every week, sometimes every 2 months, and it stays with me. And otherwise, the stuff just comes and goes. So be strategic about capturing the ideas and the practices that work for you, wherever you see them. But begin by knowing that you're already a great leader. It's just a matter of putting it into practice.
I think those are all great points, and I think that's absolutely true that by dint of what we do professionally, we're all leaders, and that's very important. So, not to repeat what everyone else said, but I think the other thing that everyone should keep in mind is that what you do and how you conduct yourself and the choices you make, they'll follow you for the rest of your career, and so you have to really make sure that you do. You do what you think is right and what is right. I can tell you that there was a time in my career when for the first time in my career, I was working with a supervisor where doing the right thing meant that it wasn't good for your future within the agency, and I sort of was confronted with that, and I said, look, I'm going to do what's right. I'm going to do what I think what's right, and I'll let the chips fall where they may. And in the short term, that was a disastrous career decision. But if I hadn't done that, my career would have ended right there, a couple of years down the road. So I think what you have to, what you have to keep in mind is that as a leader, you have to, practice what you preach, and you have to do what you feel is right, because everyone is watching, and keep that in mind. Everyone is watching, and everyone is paying attention to what you're doing. So if you're not going to do it because it's the right thing to do, just keep that in mind.
So this is going to be the last question, and then we're going to open it up to the audience for questions. So what would you tell Correctional Officer Eric Taylor, Police Officer Joe Fox, and a young prosecutor, Ray Tierney, now what you know then, if I said that correctly. So what you know now, what would you tell them if you were walking by your chief of department and you're walking by Correctional Officer Eric Taylor? What advice would you give him? What advice would you give Police Officer Fox? And what advice would you give that prosecutor, Ray Tierney?
I think I would tell myself to, number one, treat people with kindness, because we were in the type of business where people aren't always treated the best way, and people aren't always kind to each other, and that can become a problem. I would tell them that, number one. And number two, I would say, you can smile a little more sometimes. Because, as you said, I used to walk around with a look on my face that didn't really mean anything. That's just the way I look. So be cognizant of how you look, how you talk, how you approach people, and you can go far.
Thank you. Police Officer Fox.
I would see if he has the capability of watching this video. And I'd say, listen to all these four people speak, and see if you can get, you can't rush being 65 years old, but you can start. And a couple of things that I wish I did better is, don't be so hard on yourself. You're gonna make mistakes, and recognize that you have help. You're not alone in this. You have help. There's this thing with the use all your strength, this parable or whatever. The kid's walking in the field and sees this big tree or log, says, "You think I can move that, Dad?" And the father says, "If you use all your strength, you can." And the kid goes and tries to pick it up and says, "You're wrong, I can't move it." He says, "You're not using all your strength." "I'm trying as hard as I can." He says, "I'm right here, and you're not asking my help, and I can help you." And, I didn't ask anybody's help when I locked myself into It's Not a Hate Crime back in the 6th Street Precinct. When chances are, when we look back at mistakes we've made in life, we didn't look for help of others. And there's a whole bunch of people out there. Every decision's a multiple choice question. There's always other options. We just have to give ourselves the time to consider them, and the lifelines that are all around us. There's a whole world of people who want to help us. Just slow down and speak to them, seek them out.
I feel I'm at a disadvantage here because these guys' answers are really good. So, what they said. But I think when I look back at my career, I was so eager to show that I could be good at this job, and I was so eager to accomplish things, and I was very ready for a fight, and ready to argue with people and ready to prove that my way was right, and notwithstanding their opposition, I would bowl over their opposition and accomplish my goals. And, sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't. And as I've gotten older, and with age comes perspective, all of the things that I accomplished back then, I could have done it. I still could have accomplished those things, but I could have also, sought to achieve consensus. I could have, maybe compromised in some things. I could have brought some people along. And I think in the long run, not only with those cases, but the agency in general would have been so much better off. So sometimes I think you're so, blinded by what you want to do and the way you want to do it, you don't take into account other people and the effect the things you do have on, the effects the things that you do that they have on other people. And there's other ways to do it, and you should, think about the ramifications. And then after it's all over, how do we bring everybody together? How do we make people feel a part of it? And then how do we, move on and recreate that success? I think in the beginning, when you're young, you're just, I want to do this, and then I want to get out. And you're not looking necessarily to build things.
And it seems like just from listening to you three, it's mental health and well-being of the person, smiling, a consensus, caring about each other. There's a lifeline if you need it, which a lot of us, unfortunately, in law enforcement, we don't look for. We internalize our problems, especially the men. We're not going to go look for help. We're just going to deal with it. We're going to put an S on our chest and just handle whatever situation we're going to deal with. Where I think now our younger staff or the younger future leaders that are here today should know that there are lifelines out there, and they should be able to smile a little bit more. But with that, we're going to open it up for any questions.
Okay, good afternoon. This question is for Chief Taylor. Chief Taylor, when you were a chief, I was a young captain in OBCC. Not half as cool as the sheriff in ESU. But I was a young captain. We were getting slaughtered. I remember you came to roll call and you told us, you had our back, I'm giving you the equipment, and do what you gotta do. The videos that you're looking at is getting you sick, and do your jobs. I remember then, after that roll call, saying, I'm going to give it to the inmates because I'm not going to have the chief come back to roll call. like the sheriff said, you really were intimidating, but you had everybody's back. You were the true change in corrections because we really weren't doing so well. We had a lot of stuff going on with the use of force policy, and there was people weren't together, and we were kind of like going down. In your tenure, you really brought us to a level of where people were coming all over the world to see how New York City Department of Corrections was doing it. And I know they said that a lot, in your introduction, but I'm here as a witness to tell you, you really did. So I was wondering, because I believe that people in corrections now are going in the right direction, and corrections is always going to have, a part of my heart. I retired as an assistant chief. I was a warden in your command. And I was on the Board of Corrections for probably 5 years. One of the only members that came from the working ranks, from corrections. So I still am very passionate about it. What could you tell the leadership now in corrections, how to get that, because I believe they're going in the right direction, but how, and what did you do to get it going in that correct direction? Because, I believe we can get there again, but I think we're in a serious situation right now. So, what would be your advice?
Well, I think my advice would be, let's get back to culture again. The culture of the agency is different than it was then. And so many things have changed, and it's really gotten out of hand. And I think one of the biggest problems that they've had in that particular agency is that you bring in a lot of people to run the agency who don't know anything about correction. You can't make a baker into a bricklayer. You just can't do that. And in city correction, they had a habit of bringing in people who knew nothing about the agency, knew nothing about the field of corrections, who were now finding themselves to be running the agency. And from everything I've read so far, the new commissioner, I think he's on the right track. I think he's doing the right things. But it's going to take time because it's gotten so far out of hand. Remember, it took me 4 years to go from X number of violent acts a day down to maybe 2. But the things that we did then, they're just out of the question now. You know, so as I was telling someone earlier, I would call a all hands on deck where we would bring people from, at that time we had 16 jails. And if I told each jail to send me 25 people, that's a large number of people. And I can take them into any jail and quell any disturbance or do whatever we have to do to get the jail back. They don't do those things anymore. A lot of good things that I think were put in place, what happens is, oftentimes people will say, as I did, I could do it better. And you really can't. When things get to a certain level and things are running smoothly, you have to let it run smoothly and not try to put changes into things that that really are going in the right direction. My wife always says, Eric, how come you don't write an article about this? She said, you're always complaining to me about what's going on in corrections and what you hear and what you see. And I tell her, I had my time. And I'm not someone who would come back and criticize someone else for doing something the way they think is right. But I gotta tell you, there's a lot of things that I think that could be done better. I think that there were a lot of things that we had in place that, for whatever the reason, people decided that this is not the way to do it anymore. And because of those things, it creates problems, and you're where you are today. But I really believe that this commissioner is on the right track, and I think he's going to be able to do a lot of things and get things back in order. And I'll always say this, if he needs any help, I'm a good consultant for him. But I think they can turn it around. They just have to work hard and do it that way.
Thank you all for your service. And I was telling somebody earlier that we don't see forums like this in the region. So I'm very thankful to Sheriff Toulon and his team for putting this event on. I want to ask you all, though, in a lot of jurisdictions around the country, agencies don't work together, right? So in your opinions, and this goes out to the panel, how important is collaboration between the different agencies, the DA, the police, and corrections? How important is collaboration to keep crime low and to accomplish the mission, or to even eradicate crime in certain jurisdictions?
I'll start it. I think it's incredibly important. And again, when I talked about being younger, when you're younger, you say, maybe I'll do it, we'll do it despite this, we'll do it ourselves. That could work for a case, but it's not going to work over the long, haul. And, I'm very grateful. I work with Errol, I work with Rodney Harrison, Suffolk County Police Department. I worked with Jerry Hart, when I was a federal prosecutor. I still know the folks in the federal system. There are so many things that you can get from every single agency. Suffolk County Police Department, there are things that the Suffolk County Police Department can give you that you just can't get anywhere else. The Sheriff's Department, there's intelligence and there's expertise within the Sheriff's Department that you cannot get anywhere else. Federal government with their witness protection programs, with their resources, with their understanding of federal law. There's so many things that they can help you with. So if you're not utilizing all of those availabilities with every case you have, you're shortchanging your citizens. So my goal with my gang program is, let's build our gang program out and up. And let's make it so the feds want to come in and take our cases, because that means we're doing the right thing. And it's at the end of the day, it's about results, and it's about keeping people safe. So I think I'm blessed working in Suffolk County, because I get to work with Errol and I get to work with Rodney, and they're like-minded. And I think the former speaker was talking about the fights between the police commissioner and the mayor or whatever. That's counterproductive. We can't have that. We have to be about the job, and so it's unbelievably important to have that collaboration. Laura Curran, by the way.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Two parts. One is a direct answer. It's absolutely important. And the second is how I believe you do it. We can't, kind of like that kid, who didn't use all his strength. His father's right there, and he doesn't ask his help. The less people we have involved in whatever we do, the more likely the outcome's not going to be the potential that it can be. It's like that simple. It's that simple, and that applies to our team members. That's why, on the job, everybody got copied in just about every email that I sent. Ray Porteous, right? How many emails did you get that had nothing to do with you? And then at some point, he's throwing in something. I remember how he handled this. I have an idea. So I'm moving into the to the how you do it. And that's how you do it. You include everybody in everything. You invite, when we did our Meet Your Police, every district twice a year, filled up a train station with cops and activity for the community and the kids. We invited everybody, the district attorneys, the MTA, anybody that we deal with. Because the idea, Richard Green, a friend of mine, a community activist from Crown Heights, he used to say, it's much better to talk 411 than 911. And most people here remember what 411 was. It's information, before it's a crisis. So the idea of building everybody into every event when you don't have to, when there's not an issue. And then when there's an issue, all those lines are open and we're all together with each other. This event, Sheriff, this event here today, I hope it didn't come out in the mic, because before I said, I told you. This is when somebody was thanking you for this event. There's on his website, on their website, there's a section that talks about percentages of executives who want leadership training, value it, a whole variety. And what I didn't see is how many agencies give leadership training, formal leadership training like this. It's very low. It's single digit if you look at percentage. I know this, I've been around. So this is big. This is huge. It's not common. And I'm bringing this into this answer on collaboration. There's collaboration happening right here. I mean, us, the relationship that because you put this event together and because of the people here, these are relationships that are coming out of this that will mean collaboration. Who knows? There's someone sitting right there that I have a casual, respectful relationship with who we're becoming real close from today on. And she doesn't know it yet, but she's stuck with me. You may live to regret that, Tanya. And so just the fact that the people are in this room together is, it's doing things like this and including everybody that makes collaboration happen. Because we're human beings. Back to that 4-year-old hugging the 2-year-old. We can't be around each other without being nice to each other, especially if there's no issues. So we practice that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Other questions?
Thank you. Just want to say thanks. I am not law enforcement, so it's really been a privilege for me to attend and enjoy this conference. And thank you all for putting it on, Sheriff. Thank you so much. I had the chance to meet you out at our base military. And I just want to say, like I said, again, privilege to be in the room full of brothers and sisters in blue, and couldn't be more impressed with the folks that I've had a chance to meet and hear from. So thank you. And then the question I have for you as leaders is if you could just maybe talk a little bit about any way that you could say the role of a public information officer in your world or public relations in our world plays in your success as a leader.
Well, I'll start off. We're very fortunate to have a really good PIO in the Suffolk County Sheriff's Office that not only pushes out press releases but also manages our social media and helps us, with our community relations unit to engage with our community, which I felt was very important when I took office in 2018. And so we very rarely do we not attend an event or do I not make an event that I'm invited to, because I think it's very important for people to know me, not only as a person, but also as their elected official.
I would just say, I think that public aspect of it is so important. When I ran as district attorney, I didn't have a lot of institutional support. So I went out into the communities, and the thing that you realize is the communities, not everyone understands what a district attorney does. So you explain it to them, you have dialogue with them, you talk about, like, there's prosecution, but there's also rehabilitation, there's education. So you talk about all those things, and I think the nice thing about it is, like, you develop relationships and you develop trust. There was a firebombing of a mosque in Ronkonkoma, and it was over the July 4th holiday, and I had heard it and about it, and so we got up the next morning. We ran out there, and when I got out there, I saw a lot of the same faces I had seen in the community, and it was really a great interaction we had, because they had some familiarity with us. We had some familiarity with them, and I think there was a built-in trust there, and that we could sort of, then proceed together for the next steps.
Thank you. Other questions? Okay.
All right. Well, thank you. And I guess I'm supposed to give closing remarks?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Whenever you're ready.
All right.
What do you want to do? It's your show.
All right, thanks, yes. Yeah, please. You guys are my family, right, Chief Fox? All right. Wow. Where's Kelly at? Where's Kelly Mazzata? Someone please get her? Thanks.
Thank you for her, by the way.
Yeah, she's... So first, I'd like to thank Hofstra University and Dr. Susan Poser, really for allowing us to have this venue and the hospitality that Hofstra has provided. I also like to thank Commissioner, she's always going to be my commissioner, Jerry Hart, for really offering it first, really assisting us. Come here, Kelly. It's in order. In assisting us and really accommodating all of our needs. And Kelly Mazzata, the person that put this all together, from emails to speakers to venue to food, making sure everybody was taken care of. Thank you. Okay. To our sponsors, I don't have all the names, but thank you to all the sponsors that had the faith in us to really put together a good conference and participating and donating time and money. I can't thank all of you because we couldn't have made this conference successful without you being here, your participation. We would appreciate any feedback that you have because I can promise you as our first one, our second one was better than our first one, our third one will be better than our second one. We hope that we have it here at Hofstra, okay? And with that, please try and walk away with something. We saw so many diverse speakers talking about tragedy, triumph, perseverance, leadership, communication skills, and they've all offered and opened themselves up to their own personal stories. And so I hope, as we heard, maybe you can smile a little bit more, treat each other and the staff that we supervise a lot better. And when I mean a lot better, sometimes we have to come down hard on the men and women that work with us, but sometimes we can dig a little deep and find out what's going on in their lives to cause them to maybe make that misstep. And maybe we can help them, whether they're going through financial issues, health issues, relationship issues, some of the things that we don't really look at when we look at an incident that occurs with our staff. So I hope you all have a great holiday as we're coming up close to Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. And please keep in touch with us. And we hope to see you all with more of your partners in the agencies that you represent next year. God bless you all.